Did you know that way back during Windows 95 development, in the Windows Chicago days to be precise, Microsoft developed a way to run Windows 3.1 inside the soon-to-be Windows 95? Many builds of Windows Chicago, which was the beta version of Windows 95, included a loader application that allows running an existing Windows 3.1 installation inside a DOS virtual machine. This functionality was mentioned in the release notes of multiple Chicago builds. It could run alongside Chicago and had a return to Chicago button that would minimize the VM so that you could return to it without closing it off entirely. This feature was included from Windows Chicago builds 81 to 328. It was ultimately dropped from the official Windows 95 release and soon after forgotten about entirely. That, however, does not matter. In reality, the Windows 3.1 loader works on any future version of Windows which runs under DOS, meaning all of Windows 9X including Windows ME. I would like to try this on the latest mainstream Windows version possible, so ME it is. Let's try and get it running. So, here is my clean Windows ME install. First off, we have to install Windows 3.1 on a different location under our Windows partition through MS-DOS mode. There is one issue however, Windows ME had just dropped support for restarting to MS-DOS mode. Good news however is that we can restore this functionality using a revised version of a recent community made patch. We just have to run the install script and... done! We now have the respective option in the menu. I have inserted the first Windows 3.1 installation floppy disk. Let's reboot into DOS mode now. First, we have to log the C drive where ME is installed so that the Windows 3.1 setup program has direct disk access to copy files. Afterwards, we launch setup. When prompted for install location, I must not choose C Windows as that is where ME is installed. Afterwards, setup proceeds as usual. At the end of the setup, we are prompted as to whether the config and autoexec files should be modified to boot into Windows 3.1. We, of course, should not accept this, so we have to choose to make the modifications later. Let's also not save backup versions of these files, as we don't need them. And just like that, the setup has ended. The only thing left to do is to unlock the C drive to restore the disk access protection and exit to get back to Windows ME. We can now see the Win31 folder in the root of the C drive and confirm it contains the Windows 3.1 system files. Now it's time for the interesting part, integrating the loader application for the Windows 3.1 virtual machine. For this, I will use the files included in Chicago build 328, the last one which had this feature. Those files include our loader executable, two drivers, a serial and mouse driver, as well as a pif file, which is an MS-DOS shortcut to launch the loader with. First off, we copy the loader and the two drivers to the Win31 directory. Next up, we edit the system.ini file for Windows 3.1 to point to the two custom drivers. At last, we copy the pif shortcut to the desktop for convenience and edit it to point to the proper location of the loader. However, we face an issue. The loader requires we run it under Windows 4.0, which is a codename for Windows Chicago. Luckily, we can easily get through this version check by using a hex editor to modify 2 bytes, which correspond to a CPU instruction that I will replace with a jump command, meaning no matter the version check result, it will always continue on with running the loader. Let's put in our patch loader, and here it is. We get our sweet Windows 3.1 environment with a lovely Return to Windows 95 icon below, which minimizes the VM. In fact, the only main change the loader seems to have endured between Chicago builds is this specific icon being rebranded from Windows Chicago, as you may have noticed earlier, to Windows 95. That does not mean we cannot change this cosmetic detail for ourselves too. Resource Hacker is out of the question here, as it only supports 32 and 64-bit executables, and the loader is 16-bit. That's why I will utilize Resource Workshop, its 16-bit older brother. Real quick, I will modify the string to say Windows ME and modify both versions of the icon so that the 95 is gone. Let's save this over the original executable and look at that, return to Windows ME, now it feels complete. The Windows 3.1 VM works very decently, however it does not provide an 100% ideal experience, as the control panel is totally broken and the msdos prompt cannot be started. As Microsoft veteran Raymond Chen outlines in his blog post about working on this feature, it was soon cut off due to multiple reasons, one being missing integration of the Windows 3.1 environment with the host Windows system, and another being the compatibility nature of Windows itself, as Windows 95 was intended to be as backwards compatible as possible with Windows 3.1 software, meaning you shouldn't have to go back in the first place. Regardless, I still believe this was a really cool proof of concept that Microsoft did back in the day. I love the fact that even if this functionality was stripped from the official Windows 95 release, it can still easily be patched to work with future DOS-based versions of Windows. I have linked any relevant sources for this video in the description. I hope you enjoyed and goodbye for now.